So my story begins like a lot of other modern day American immigrant stories. You ever notice that when they tell American immigrant stories, they keep on telling the Ellis Island American story, where they came into New York Harbor and the first thing they saw was the Statue of Liberty, and they anglicized their names and they checked them for diseases. I think Ellis Island's been closed for something like 100 years. It's about time we start telling new ones. And so the modern American immigrant stories go something like this. I was born in Alexandria, Egypt. My dad was an engineer and my mother was a teacher. But they looked around and they decided that they'd be able to give me a better life and my siblings if we came here to America. And so we did that. We got on a plane, not a steamship, landed in JFK, and eventually we settled in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. And just a little aside, I learned this while I was putting together this video. Bensonhurst, Brooklyn has the second highest concentration of immigrants in New York City. And looking back on it, that makes a lot of sense. Because where I grew up, immigrant mentality reigned supreme. And when I say immigrant mentality, I'm thinking something along the lines of, the parents came here to give their kids a better life. And so the parents are working nonstop. And so the kids, they see that. They see the sacrifices that their parents made. And so they have a sense of responsibility that they have to do something worthwhile here in America and achieve some kind of success so that they can make it all worth it. And so growing up in Brooklyn, I had a great Brooklyn childhood. I played manhunt in the streets. I played in the park. I went to the libraries personally. I spent a lot of time in the mosque. I spent a lot of time at the Yemeni stores, hanging out with my friends after school, listening to music, watching TV. All that standard Brooklyn childhood stuff. But in the back of my mind, I knew that I had to do something to make it all worthwhile. And how was success defined? Where I was from? Well, it didn't really matter where you were from, where I grew up, because most of my friends, they were either first generation kids, their parents were immigrants, or they were immigrants themselves. But it didn't matter what country you came from, what your background, what culture, what language you spoke, none of that mattered. All of us seemed to be on the same page with success for our, younger generation was to do well in school so we can get into a good college. And we heard this everywhere. We heard this at home, we heard this at school, we heard this from our family friends, we reinforced it together. And the reason that I'm bringing this up, because this is what the video is going to talk about, because they sold us this college dream and this college vision, and it turned out to be so much less than that. And here's what I mean. Starting in elementary school, so I remember when I was at PS 205, they were telling us that we had to do well in elementary school so we can get into a good junior high school. And when I got to junior high school, they were like, look, you gotta take Math A in the 8th grade, you gotta take your specialized high school exam admission test so you can get into Brooklyn Tech. And when that didn't quite work out for me, I landed at Midwood, and when I got to Midwood, the race is really on, right? Take your extracurriculars, do community service, start learning your SAT words because you're prepping for SAT, keep your GPA up, try to get noticed by colleges, write these crazy college essays. And so I did all of that. A part of me felt, this doesn't make sense. How can success be defined by getting into college? What about the people who are working as contractors? What about the people who are starting small businesses in the neighborhood? But look, I was like 15 or 17 around the time when I was having this idea. I had enough brain power to start questioning like this, but I didn't have it in me to push back on the system because all my friends are doing it. There's no way that I'm gonna be the one kid who doesn't get into a good college and my parents are looking at me. I felt like I had to do this. So I buckled down. I'm doing tutoring, I'm studying my ass off, I'm joining the track team, I'm joining the lacrosse team, shout out to the 2011 undefeated champs, I'm joining the theater club, I'm writing essays, swearing up and down to these colleges, telling them how much I'm passionate about engineering, even though I had no idea what engineering was. I was 17 years old. At that age, you don't know what engineering is. You're more interested in women and music. But I did all of that, and it paid off. In 2011, I was to start at NYU Poly as a civil engineering major. I'd made it. I was in the promised land. For the first 18 years of my life, everyone that I knew, everything around me defined success by getting to this point. And I got there. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I was excited. Orientation week, meeting new people, making new friends, being in the city. I was with all of it. I was so excited for classes to start, but immediately I knew that something was off. Because here's the thing, my whole life, everyone told me that I had to go to college to be successful. So I think rightfully so, I assumed that there was something in college that you can only find in college that would help you become successful. I mean, if that wasn't the case, then they wouldn't stress college so heavily, right? But it wasn't like that. The professors could care less whether or not you learned. The course materials and the teaching that they did Zero impact. Most of the things that I learned when I was in college were via Patrick JMT, Khan Academy, YouTube, and study groups that I set up with my friends. The knowledge that they were constantly teaching us in college was hardly applicable when we got to the real world. And that's not just my opinion. They were constantly saying that with a chuckle, and they would say things like, yeah, it's not like this when you get to the real world, or you're never gonna actually use this when you get to the industry. Then why are you teaching it to me like this? I started realizing that the system was not set up in a way to educate you on things that you can use once you got into the real world, but rather it was just about taking tests and doing homework. I was heartbroken. I can't even convey to you how upset I was by this. Look, I don't know if it was because of my upbringing or my environment or my schooling. I don't know what it was, but I'd had this idea in my mind that there was these huge problems in the world, right? Figuring out renewable energy, figuring out clean energy, figuring out the housing crisis, figuring out automation, figuring out how to bring out AI. And I thought that you were supposed to go to college so that you can be trained up so that you can work on these ideas. And it looked like the way that college was set up, it was completely disconnected from getting you to a point where you could begin resolving these problems. The way that college was set up was so that you would get there, get a piece of paper that basically said the college felt like you were trained up in these topics, and then you would take that piece of paper and you would go get a job at a corporate company. Companies that had no imagination whatsoever. And the worst thing is, I was taking on thousands of dollars of debt to do this. Thousands of dollars of debt. And so you know what I did? I wish I could tell you that I dropped out, but I didn't have the balls. I couldn't bring myself to do it because I didn't understand this then, right? I mean, I understood it in my gut, but I couldn't articulate it to you like I am now. I stayed in college because even though college wasn't going to help me solve any of the world's problems, even though college seemed like a big waste of time, college gave me a semblance of status. All right, and let me explain to you what I mean by that. My freshman year of college, I used to work at the Bose store out in Soho. And when someone would ask me, hey, what are you doing, right? Because that's the question that everyone asks anybody when they see them at a party or dinner or at a gathering. Hey, what are you doing? I would tell them I'm studying civil engineering at NYU. And that sounded infinitely better than I don't know, or I'm working in retail, or I'm figuring things out. I couldn't let go of that. I was chasing status. And aside from that, right, there's the money aspect that plays into it, because I never really had too much money that was my own, but I knew that if I finished up my college degree, there was a guarantee of a salary that would give me something like $60,000 or $65,000. And so I was seduced by that. I didn't have the strength of will to walk away from that and figure out what I wanted to do. And so for the first year or two of college, I kind of just stumbled blindly through trying to keep up because there was no way that I was going to walk away from the college trap, right? So I just kept on doing it half-heartedly until my sophomore year. I had this idea, right? Okay, I'm gonna stick with this college thing. I'm gonna hedge my bet by doing this, but while I'm in college, I'm gonna start a startup. I mean, the guy who did Snapchat did it. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook when he was there. So I was gonna build something. So I spin the wheels, I'm thinking, and I arrived at this idea for a website called Ticker Vote, all right? The idea was pretty simple. It would be a website where you can go on there and vote on any topics: bullfighting, homosexuality, the Catholic Church, the President of the United States, alternate side parking, any topics in the world you can vote up or down on. And I thought that if we got enough topics on there and enough people using it, it can kind of serve as a barometer for the world, or a thermometer for the world's sentiment about any topic. And so I got a graphic designer to help me with the logo. I got a friend to help me with the website. I put out the word about it on Facebook, and we actually got the website built and we put it out on Facebook, and then kaput, nothing happened. Something very similar happened a couple of years after I graduated, right? In 2016, I was working at this small company in Manhattan. I was putting Wi-Fi in the New York City Transit subway system. And while I was there, I was like, look, time to get on the bull again and try something new. So me and my buddy, we built this idea. We had this idea for a company called Park Here. And the idea was very simple. It was an Airbnb for parking spots in South Brooklyn. And again, we built the logo, we designed the website, we got some flyers, we put out the word. We even got people who reached out to us interested to rent out their parking spots in their houses to teachers that were in the neighborhood. And then that idea also, kaput, didn't come to anything. What the hell was going on? Here's my theory. I think the education system, school and college, they killed the hustle. And here's what I mean by that. From an early age, your success is defined by a closed system where there's constant feedback. Feedback from your teachers and your professors in the form of giving you grades, and feedback from seeing all of your friends going towards that same goal. So once you step outside of that, right? Once you try to build a startup while you're in college, there's no one giving you a grade on it. There's no one setting the deadlines, and none of your friends are doing it. So you begin to feel scared on the inside. What the hell am I doing, wasting my time, putting money into this? There's no guarantee of success from this. I'm gonna look like a fool. I'm gonna look like an idiot. And so for me, when I was building Tickervote the first time, that's what happened. And so boom, I just snapped right back into the college mode, right? There's a guaranteed success of that at the end. And there's also that constant reinforcement. There's that constant feedback loop from your professors and your friends seeing doing that. And once you get out of college, the corporate companies, they got you with that feedback loop that you need, that you've become addicted to from when you're a child. Now your manager and your boss, they're gonna tell you whether or not you're doing a good job. You can keep score with your friends by seeing who's making more money, who's making less money. And most of your friends that you grew up with, that you went to school with, that you went to college with, now they're in these corporate jobs too. Once you decide to step outside of that and try to build a startup, try to build a company, you don't have that feedback of a boss or a manager telling you what a good job you're doing. You don't have that guaranteed income. You don't have the status that comes with being employed. And suddenly you're apart from all of your friends. And that's killer on a lot of people. That was killer on me. Stepping outside of the yellow brick road of college or the yellow brick road of working at a company, I could hardly survive it in the beginning. I'd lost faith in myself by going through what everyone around me had told me was success. Success, quote unquote, killed the hustle.